business model. We want to talk about that. And then again, ultimately, it's just about questions and answers. What is it that you all want to talk about? What are your concerns? That's really what I want to address today, rather than walking through a formalized presentation. Let me start by just saying at a very high level a few things about our company. As I mentioned, we're about 10 years old. And today, we work with about 35 universities across the United States. Now, who are the universities? Who are they? And how are they similar to Pembroke? Or how are they different than Pembroke? Let me start by saying that 99.9% of those universities are public. We partner really with only one private university, and that's Baylor University. I went to Baylor, and we have their MBA online. Did you really? Let's stick and bear. There you go, exactly. So, but the bottom line there, and they had homecoming last week, and I was there, and they get homecoming this weekend. But from that perspective is, again, with that one exception, all of the schools that we partner with are public institutions. Why is that? Because similar to Pembroke here, it is about providing access to students at a tremendous tuition and return on investment perspective for those students. That's where the biggest need is, and that's why we have always been focused on public universities and always will be as a company. We don't work with any for-profit universities, and we never will. So our dedication is to schools just like Pembroke. Now, what size of institutions of those 35 schools do we work with as an example? The majority are similar to you all. And what do I mean by that? In the University of Texas system, where both Colleen and I live in Dallas, Texas, that's where the headquarters are for our company. In Texas, as an example, we work with 7 schools in the University of Texas system. In Louisiana, we work with 3 schools in the LSU system. In California, we work with several schools in the California State University system. Now, what size are those schools? They range anywhere from a couple of thousand students, on average up to 10 or 15,000 students. Now, saying that, we do also work with Tier 1 research institutions. We work with the University of South Carolina. We work with the University of Rhode Island, University of Cincinnati, University of Arizona, Florida International University. So from that perspective, I want you to just understand that Pembroke is different than any school that we work with, but we have large experience in working with schools that are part of a system. And we are dedicated to regional institutions like Pembroke. That's number one. I want you to know who we work with. What type of programs do we work with? They're represented around this table. Whether it's MPAs, whether it's nursing, whether it's education, whether it's political science, those are the type of programs we work with around the United States. Why? Because the programs that you represent here in this room are in demand, clearly. They're high demand programs. Many, and by the way, the majority of what we do are more professional type degrees. So when you look, the one exception is nursing. We do a number of things at the undergraduate nursing space. That's really the one exception for us, is an RN to BSN. Your friends down the road at UNC Wilmington, and many of you I think maybe know this, we do partner with them on their nursing programs, both undergraduate and graduate. So if you put the undergraduate space in nursing kind of to the side, 100% of what we do is at the postgraduate level. So what is our goal for Pembroke? It is not to impact or impair your on-campus students and the students that come here from a traditional perspective. Candidly, with everything that we do from a marketing and working with you together to expand your reach here at Pembroke, if we're doing our job properly, your on-campus programs will grow while the online programs will grow as well. That's what will happen, and it happens 100% of the time with our partner institutions. So please know that from that perspective. So again, it's postgraduate. Now let's talk about what the goals are for the programs that we work with. Those goals are decided by you, not by us, from an enrollment perspective. I can give you stories of programs where we have a few hundred students after, by the way, 18 to 24 months. This does not happen overnight. It takes time to grow programs. It takes time for the world, if you will, to know that you now have online programs. And I'll come back to your online programs in just a moment, because we know you already offer a few things. But from that perspective, again, our goal, if you boil it all down, is strictly to gain you greater access to prospective students that don't have the ability to come to UNC Pembroke. It's attracting, if you will, primarily working professionals. That's what it's designed to do. Again, our marketing, as we work with you and take you to market, our company is literally invisible to the student. They do not know that academic partnerships exist. So from that perspective, as we talk to a student, we talk to the student as Pembroke, not as academic partnerships. So as I mentioned, our interests are aligned with your interests from that perspective. When you look again at our business model, what is our goal? Number one, it's to meet your goals of what you established for an online program. If that is to say it's 100 students or 200 students or 300 students or more, that's what our goal is, to meet those objectives of yours. Our company, as a side note, is not compensated until you have admitted a student and that student is paying the university, period. So please know that. Now, let me back up, and we can go into academics because of the faculty that are here, but let me also start by saying this. The content in the courses that are offered on the programs that we represent, that content is 100% entirely your content and decided by you and you alone, not us, period. We don't share in that intellectual property, and we don't make decisions as to what goes into the content of courses. That will 100% reside with you and you alone. Now, please understand, we will bring tremendous resources to the university to assist in that process, in that conversion process, if you will, to an online format. So we do have an academic services team that will come to campus and will work hand in hand with each one of you individually to convert your course. Now, from that perspective, though, again, it's your decision as to what goes in the course, we're strictly the conduit to help with that. It's important to note also that the ability, or the decision, I should say, to enroll or not enroll a student 100% resides with you, in your college, in your university, not us. We recruit solely to your admission standards. As we take your programs to market, we market to your admission standards, and if a student doesn't meet those admission standards, then they don't meet the admission standards, and they will not be enrolled in your school. So, again, are we focused on what's most important to you? As Dr. Simmons just mentioned, the idea is yes. What is most important to you? It is quality of the program. It's the experience of the students. It's interaction with you as faculty. That's what's most important to us. So when you look today at how we are judged as a company, we're judged really on two things. One, most importantly, is the graduation rates of the students in the programs that we represent. And that's where we're aligned totally with you here at Pembroke. That's number one. Number two is sure. We're also graded, if you will, by our partners as to meeting their enrollment objectives and goals for the programs we represent. So make no mistake of that. But our success, if you will, as a company, is 100% tied to your success as a university. The persistence and the graduation rates in the programs that we represent typically average somewhere in the neighborhood of about 89 to 93, 94%. So they're exceptionally high. And again, that's using your content and your decisions and your grading. We have nothing to do with that. So I'll pause there as a few overview statements, and then maybe we can just go through some questions and answers, and we could talk about the model that we use if you'd like, and again, how it impacts and how it's different than what you're currently doing on campus. I'm happy to talk about that as well.
So, Joe, how about I lead off with a question?
Sure. Yeah.
One of my concerns, in fact, one of my primary concerns, is that our students, my experience as a professor, is that our students sometimes struggle to complete courses even within completing content.
Sure. To
give you an idea, we accept students, on average, below the 25th percentile in GRE scores. Which means 75% of students that we accept into our program, 75% of the students who took the GRE did better than our students. So we target students that are first-generation college students.
Sure.
My concern is if a student is having a difficult time completing a class in 16 weeks, how can I expect that student to not struggle in an 8-week class unless I reduce content, which is something is anathema to me. I don't believe in reducing content. Sure. So how would you address my concerns?
Sure. First of all, what I'd say, I congratulate you on, we know that, and that's why one of the things that attracted us to Pembroke, by the way, was the fact that you do work with first-generation students. And that's very similar to many of the universities we partner with in Texas, as an example, in the Valley of Texas. UT Rio Grande Valley, UT Permian Basin, those schools, very similar to where you are here, are primarily focused on first-generation students. So number one is, Joe, we do have a history of working with universities that have first-generation students. And we applaud you, obviously. We think that's a tremendous opportunity for you, for the community, and for the university. So number one, I applaud you there. Number two is, we do not see, on average, and I am not the academic services team leader, and that person will come to campus, work with you, Joe, and work with each one of you as faculty members. We do not look to you to reduce the rigor or the content of your courses. Yes, it is converting it from a 16-week course to an 8-week course. And 100% of the programs that we work with around the United States are on accelerated courses, typically 7 to 8 weeks in length. And we'll talk about why that is in the model here in just a moment. But number one is, we are not about reducing rigor in courses, and that process, if you will, that goes in that is difficult. And you're right, the student from the perspective that is used to a 16-week course now compresses it to 8 weeks. Does that somewhat impact their workload on a weekly basis? Oh, absolutely, Joe, it does. So in essence, instead of a typical 16-week course, where a student might have 7 to 8 hours, if you will, typically, and I know that all ranges, but when we look at kind of Carnegie averages, maybe 7 to 8 hours, if you will, of work associated with that 16-week course. If you now move it to an 8-week course, it does increase. It increases typically to somewhere 14 to 16 weeks, hours per week. It does, and that's real. So a student does have to be ready for that. But we do not see, if you will, all of our programs are that way. The student is only taking one course at a time, not several.
So you're saying we limit students to one course at a time?
We don't limit them, but most can take one or two. It is up to them. It's in their discretion, and that can determine, obviously, how long it takes them to make it all the way through that degree, if you will. But typically, it's one or two courses at a time, where a student that might even be online already might be taking 2 8-week courses back to back, not simultaneously sometimes. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so is it fair to say that a student currently that takes one class that takes 16 weeks,
yep.
If we then require them to take one class every 8 weeks, is it fair to say that we effectively double their workload for that 8-week period?
I wouldn't necessarily say double, Joe, but yes, there will be an impact. But what I can tell you is that, number one, back to I think your question too, when you look at who these students are, we value who you are accepting into these programs. We don't see our partners have to ever adjust or change their admission standards. I can tell you in the 10 years and the 260 programs that we work with as a company, I have never ever seen a university do that. Now, I'm not saying that's not necessary or that we wouldn't have to alter your programs, because again, you're different. And only our academic services team working with you directly will know that. I can just tell you from a history perspective, we have not seen the need to do that. Will it potentially increase, obviously, the workload on that student? It will, Joe. It will.
Yeah, I would argue mathematically
it will
increase it by, it will double it.
I don't know if it'll quite double it, but it might take it from.
It will double. Mathematically, it has to double.
That's fine.
Unless I reduce content.
And again, all I can assure you is our partner, as our academic service team works with you to develop your course, they will work through that, the rigor of the course, look through the redesign of that course, and they're not looking to reduce the content. They're just not.
So
but
will we be required to redesign our courses?
Redesign is however you want to call it redesign. The aspect there is, again, if it's a 16-week course taken to 8 weeks, that takes work. And that's where our academic services team will work with you individually to make that happen.
Okay, so my concern still would be with effectively doubling a student's workload. And we already have students that struggle with the 16-week workload.
But Joe, you're not going to cut those students out. You're still going to offer that face-to-face.
Oh, only face-to-face. I'm talking online.
So if I'm a student and I say, you know what, I can't double my workload, I'm just not built that way, then for whatever reason, I got to continue with 16 weeks. They're going to continue. But you got the mom, the dad, the working person out there who says, I want to get this over and I want to get it done, and yes, I can do it. Then that's who you're applying. I don't think it's fair to say that you're going to take all your students who you have right now and they're all going to go to online. They're not.
That's not who this is. We are not replacing. Let's make sure and make it perfectly clear. That's a good point, Chancellor. I mean, this is not to replace anything on campus. They will be side by side. So you will continue to have that face-to-face student and that's fantastic, that comes to campus and that will be working with you in that 16-week format. That will not go away. This is strictly, as the Chancellor just mentioned, our goal is to get you a different individual that works toward this, that values entirely the online experience. That's the idea.
So 80% of our students right now are online, just to give you an idea.
80% of what students?
80% of all of our MPA students are online currently.
You said your students, I meant the whole university.
Right, yeah, mine, MPA students.
Sure.
80% of our students are online, which means...
In what format are they on?
16-week formats. And so my concern is for those students primarily, that they are going to have their workload double. The minimum number of classes they can take is effectively 6 credit hours. Through this load, even if they take one class, if the workload is doubled, that's the equivalent of 6 credit hours. Right now, 27% of my students take only 3 because they're working adults. They can only handle 3 credit hours. They lose that option effectively. If we double their workload, they lose that option. I'm concerned I'll lose those students.
Joe, I don't have a specific answer to you. Their workload will increase. I am not going to argue that in the slightest. It will. All I can point to you is the history that we've seen with our programs and how we work with you to ensure that, first of all, the rigor is not reduced and that the students that we attract on your behalf will meet your admission standards. And again, the success rates in the programs we've had as an example. Again, from our perspective, to this day, we have graduated roughly, our partners together, about 100,000 students. Today we have about 30,000. We've been doing this for 10 years. So from that perspective, we will look at your course individually. We will look at your students. Pembroke is different than any other school, as I mentioned. But will the rigor or the number of hours required, will it increase? It will, Joe. All I can just tell you is let's look at the experience of what we had in the past. I don't have a direct answer more than that.
Okay.
And that our academic services team is going to work directly with you to ensure that. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay.
I have a big question. If you say you're going to work with us, and he's clearly told you what they're doing right now with 16 weeks is actually working, it doesn't sound like you're going to work with us if you keep telling him, oh, it's got to be 8 weeks. If you're going to be working for us, why
Sure.
couldn't you modify what you're doing to actually fit what he wants?
That's a great question. Because the reason we can't is because, as the Chancellor just mentioned, we're trying to attract for you a different student. Okay, now this student is a working professional that might live in Charlotte or might live in Knoxville, wherever they might be. Let's talk about for just a minute what the landscape is for online programs. There's really only 3 or 4 reasons that a student's going to enroll in your Pembroke online, whatever that program is, whether it's in business education, health, whatever it is. There's really 3 or 4 reasons. One is they're going to look at your program and look at the cost and the tuition and return on that investment. 2, they're going to look at the admission standards. 3, they're going to look at how long will it take me to gain this degree. 4th, when can I start, basically when I'm about ready to. Now, from that perspective, if you are to do this and go online, you are going to have to meet those objectives, or there candidly are just too many other offerings out there from that perspective. So again, if you're on a 16-week online scenario, it is strictly non-competitive, and you cannot grow those programs in any way, shape, or form of any significance. Now, what is significance? You determine what that is, not me. But all I can tell you is the drivers in the marketplace today, you will be non-competitive. You just will. Now, you have to make a decision here at the university whether that competitive model is for you or not, and we value that. And it is not for every program, and it's not for every university. All I can tell you is that is the market.
Okay, where's the data to support what you're talking about? Because to me, this university, if I would say, you're looking at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse right here, and it sounds like you're trying to sell us and sell us down to McDonald's, $1 billion sold.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's just not true. Let's look at Harvard, let's look at UT, let's look at the other schools that are doing this as well. And their academic rigor, and your academic rigor will not be diminished in any way, shape, or form. And if you believe that, then I wouldn't do this. It won't be. But all I can assure you is we will invest on your behalf tremendous amount of resources, and not just in marketing. So I know maybe you think it's just marketing, it's not. It's academic resources, it's enrollment specialists, it's retention specialists, to get you graduation retention rates that I will estimate will be very, very strong or similar. In most cases, they match or exceed what the on-campus programs have at the universities that we represent. And that's not because of the reduced rigor. So again, we are not trying to make your Ruth Chris, if you will, something dumbed down to McDonald's. And if you believe that, I'm sorry, this is not for you. It's not.
If I could say something, our problem is we're recruiting against Ruth Chris, right? So I go out and I'm offering the MBA program to United Technologies that will pay full tuition and all of that.
Sure.
I'm not competing against East Carolina. I'm competing against Penn State's Global MBA, Boston University, who shows up at every place we go. They have a face-to-face, Boston University, face-to-face MBA in Charlotte, completely online program.
Yep.
My faculty teach MBA classes during 5 weeks during the summer. So I think they can do it in 8 if they had to. And I can't top the chancellor's story, but I made this statement 12 years ago as dean. I was hoping I'd be dead before it came to this. But when our MBA program shrank from 75 to 17 students, even though our kids had, they just wouldn't come to campus from 6 to 9, 2 nights a week. They had spouses, church, community, and other things, and we were getting great reviews. But so I told the faculty, and I had made that statement in front of them. I said, here's your choice. We either cancel the MBA program, because I can't have one with 17 students and 12 faculty teaching it. And so I'm not a big fan, first of all, but it's kind of your analogy in medicine, sir. It's we can either just go away in terms of the MBA. There's 22 different MBAs in Charlotte that are available that we compete with.
That are on this model.
They're on models similar.
Or more aggressive.
One of your competitors has one. We have international accreditation, one of 750 business schools in the world out of 16,000. Yeah. That's why you're partnering with us.
Keenan Flagler, UNC, uses this model.
So, Barry, what did your program grow last year? What did the MBA program grow?
It doubled.
So
and we're going to try and double it again next year.
So your MBA program doubled last year.
Right.
It seems to me you don't have a recruiting problem.
You don't have a problem.
No, my reference was to the previous MBA.
Yeah, but I'm saying now, you doubled your program in a year. It doesn't sound to me like you have a marketing problem competing with other.
I didn't say we have a marketing problem. We're looking to grow the program. Presently, our program is not available to a lot of students. So this would run in tandem and first of all, we're not going to do anything. He'll meet with our faculty this afternoon.
Sure.
He thinks this is a tough sell. He's got it, this afternoon.
I want to say, we're in nursing, and we've already done 8 weeks in our R&DSN. And our graduation rate in our R&DSN program is about 9%. And so we do well with that. We did take our 16-week course, and basically had to say to a student, if you think you can only handle one course, because our work did double, and we had to say we'll take one course at a time, and it'll take you the same amount of time to get through the program. We do have a few students who say, I think I can handle 2 this 8 weeks, but next week, because of life, I'm only going to handle 1. Sure. So that's a lot of advisement to have to go there, because it took me, an educator, it means that I also am constantly evaluating and judging and working with my cohort. Every cohort is very different. And so when I look at, as an educator, it's being that facilitator of learning, not just the distributor of content. Sure. And a lot of what you've got and have talked about is distributing content. I'm looking at how then, like with our MSN students, when we told them they wanted a blended program, they did not want a total online program.
Sure.
Because, so that they could have that interaction for the ethical comportment and the affective domain changes and the role transition. So that has begun to work well with our program. I just want to say is when I've talked to my faculty, colleagues who are at some of the other universities, specifically UNCW, how what was sold to them was, well, you don't have to do they don't grade your papers. We actually lost faculty from our program to go to that one because of, oh, you don't have to do all that busy work that's associated with teaching. But to me, that I'm hoping that if you come to our campus, that becomes still my job as a faculty member.
Sure.
And that's incorporated in my workload, because that's when I really learn how my students are learning and thinking. Not just to get rid of the idea of teaching, because to me, education is more than just linear content. It is that true integration of skill and attitude and ethics and integration of knowledge, so that I can creatively use it in the work environment. They courses have worked well for us in our R&D. We've had a couple of students who we've had to say, no, you need to come to campus and take pathophysiology because, you know, you've tried it 8 weeks and it's not successful. I've got another avenue for you.
Sure.
So we would have to maintain a variety of avenues. And so I think that's the one thing is the fact that what would be those avenues that we would need to make sure that we maintain.
And just as a side note, through the technology that's utilized through your learning management system, you control that interaction. So how you want to interact with that student, again, is decided entirely by you and not by us. So yes, in the model that we bring to bear, in essence, think in terms of having for every section of students, we suggest, you don't have to, this is not a requirement by us, but for every section of students, you do have some type of coach or graduate of teaching assistant that can help and assist with some of that grading and other pieces of it. But how that person interacts with you and how that person interacts with students is entirely decided by you and you alone. And how you want to interact virtually with your students that are online is up to you.
And that's my complaint to my colleagues at UNCW, is that part was, they were so overloaded with numbers of students that they didn't feel like they were truly educated.
And again,
and I think that would be something I would have a lot of discussion with administration about.
My question is actually kind of related to that, and you might cover this. I'm Kevin Freeman in political science administration. I suspect you probably cover this when you talk about the model a little bit, but I assume that this program is a year-round thing, correct? We did, what, 6-8 week sections in a calendar year or something thereabout? So my concern is perhaps the burden that it places on the faculty as far as their teaching load is concerned, in that by compressing it from 16 weeks to 8 weeks, our faculty members have a teaching load that they're expected to abide by, which could result in us needing more people to teach a lot of these courses. And in the short run, that means reliance on adjuncts, perhaps, and which potentially could dilute the quality of the program in that regard as well. So do you have anything related to that you can talk about?
Sure, and I can show you an example of what we will call kind of our carousel model. And in our carousel model, if you will, the idea is that, first of all, in the MPA or political science, not all, if there's 10 or 12 in a master's level program, not all courses are taught at the same time. So we develop a carousel where certain teacher will teach that first 8-week course and then will be off, if you will, until that carousel comes back around to that individual. The syllabus is determined by you. The order of courses is determined by you. That's the idea. So we do not see, and I can show you examples like you see on the screen, we do not see or require the need for you to add faculty or add adjuncts at the beginning of a program. And I can show you what I mean if that would be helpful. Let me just show you this real quick because I think it could be helpful for everyone. So if you look, let's go here. To your point just a moment ago, when you say there are 8-week courses, and when you look at those 8-week courses, and why do we do that? Again, as your question here earlier was, what is the model? This is the model that we use for our partners. And that model, if you will, is one that has, we've got to meet the demands of the marketplace. So the demands of the marketplace say that the typical course will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 weeks in length. By having 6 to 8 week courses, that will allow you, to your question right here, will then allow you to have several starts throughout the year. 6 starts throughout the year. That's the idea. So the reason for that is when a student is looking for your program, whether it's your MPA or MBA, they're going to be looking at another 8 to 10 programs at the same time. And if you only have 2 starts per year, they will go somewhere else. If it's September 15th and you just have a start and they can't start till January or February, they'll go to another program. There's just too much competition in the marketplace today. So by having 8-week courses, it facilitates 6 starts per year. That's the idea. And then it also facilitates a duration of a course. It's typically a program that's typically about a year to a year and a half in length. Now, what does the actual carousel look like? When you look here at this carousel, and this is a business carousel, so the idea is this. This is designed to maximize you as the professorial base from the perspective you're not all teaching at the same time. And again, I'll get to the support mechanism in just a moment. But the idea here is this. That top line where it says Start 1 on the left, think in terms of this is me in an MBA program. And if I'm in that MBA program, there's a fixed course called Foundations, whatever you might call that. But there's a fixed course, and then the second course, Statistics, Economics, Strategy, goes out for 12 courses for your MBA program. So my first 8 weeks, I'm in Foundations. My second 8 weeks, I move into Statistics. In this scenario, Colleen comes along 8 weeks later, and in this start, she starts with Foundations. So you're correct. In this, that fixed course, and most have fixed courses, and they have capstones at the end. In that scenario, whoever that teacher is, professor here, they are teaching every start, the Foundations professor. That will stress that obviously that individual or individuals. But as time goes by, I start with Foundations. My second course is Statistics. Colleen comes along 8 weeks later. Her first course is Foundations. Now, when you get out here, my third course, though, is Economics. Colleen is taking Economics as her second course, and when the carousel comes back around at the end, she takes Statistics. Now, whoever comes along here, right here, Cammie comes along, her first course is Foundations while we're here. The next start, though, I am in Strategy, Colleen's in Strategy, Cammie is in Strategy, and that other person is in Foundations, and so on. This is as simple as it gets. No carousel is like this. No carousel is this easy, but it's for illustrative purposes. In this scenario right here, how many professors are teaching at any one time? 2. None are that easy. But this is to show you the idea. But it's not 10 and it's not 12 that are teaching at the same time. So, what's important too? What's important is here and here. If this is a section, think in terms of every one of these as a section that might have 20 students in a section, somewhere thereabouts. So now you're the strategy professor. When you get out here, and you might be fine, you're saying I'm the stats professor and I'm teaching on campus and I'm fully in load, but I can teach one online course, I'm good. You might be the economics professor that says, I'm good. I can teach 40 students here even though I'm fully in load. Now you get to the strategy that says, I can't. He or she says, I can't do it. I don't have enough time in the day. I can't support these students, 90 students or 60 students here. So what do? We suggest that for every one of these, there is a coach. Who is that coach? You determine the resume requirements, who they are, and what they do, not us. So if you're an accounting major, you said, I want some, or accounting professor, I want someone with Big 3 accounting experience, that's who is sourced to you to do that. So that's the model that is utilized. Does that address your question?
Yes.
That is what we do, again, with all of our partners. We employ what we call this carousel model. The other thing about this is, if you are that economics professor or strategy, again, keep in mind, and to your point earlier, Joe, and I value that, you're teaching on campus for your traditional students that are 16 weeks in length. This course is 8 weeks in length. You do still have, as a professor, an additional 8 weeks for research or to do other things that you need to. So this is not a 16 weeks. So keep that in mind as well. This is the model that we use. And again, it's important for you to know, this is you, the faculty of record, and will always be you, always. Now the support mechanism, we call them different things, instructional, you can call them coaches, graduate teaching assistants. These individuals are here to support you and the student. That's what they do. Now, It's up to you. If you want to do the grading, and you want to handle discussion boards, and you want to handle the threads, that is perfectly in your purview. If you don't, you set the stage for what that person does and doesn't do, and they report to you. Does that make sense? That's the model as well. As you start to scale and grow a program, but that takes time as well. So this is not something you need to do overnight.
So Joe,
Yes.
We actually used your algorithm and created a carousel
Okay.
for our program because we have classes that are required in specific orders, very specific orders.
Sure.
Our carousel ended up adding, at the end of the first year and a half, 16 extra headcounts.
Sure.
16 extra headcounts.
If there is, obviously, if you cannot, and you need to have 100% of your courses stair-step, building off of each other, Joe, that's going to happen. And maybe this isn't right for your MPA program, if that's the case.
So, yeah, and it does.
And most, again, our programs across the United States, every course is not built off of every course. If you look at your MBAs, I have my MBA as well. I didn't have to take all those courses in order. They don't all build off. You might have accounting first, or you might have statistics first, but then you can mix and match the programs throughout the degree. That's the idea.
Yeah,
And if you can't, then that creates a problem. We do not advocate, and I would not be here talking to the chancellor and looking at the chancellor advocating you hire a new faculty day one. You can't do that. No university that we partner with ever hires faculty day one, ever.
I would like to go in a slightly different direction.
Sure.
I want to be very honest. I don't want to be blunt or disrespectful.
No.
But I think there are some things I'd like to put on the table.
Sure.
Since we have not had a chance to, this has happened so quickly, hasn't been a lot of transparency, and I'm therefore ill-prepared to really talk details. But I will tell you up front, being perfectly honest, not critical, I am one who regards this proposed arrangement, this partnership, as a disaster in the making. I say that based upon the fact that I believe the model upon which it was based is a failed one where academic integrity and program quality are concerned. I've examined some of your university partners, and the faculty are universally unhappy with the setup. They don't like it at all. I've also done some online research and found some former employees who say that your leadership is unethical and that you don't care about students. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying I found these things, okay, and I haven't had a chance to do thorough research. I've also been told by somebody claiming to be in the know that AP has a reputation for overselling services, many of which are unneeded, and delivering only marginal results. Now, these are things I have seen. I'm not saying they're true, okay? But I add that, it's out there. I can tell you some of the universities that I have looked up and investigated, I trust the faculty. When they say they're unhappy, there's probably a legitimate reason for it. Now, I'm a person with over 35 years in higher education, PhD. I've got 17 years of academic experience. I have a perspective that is shaped by all of that. I'm not a businessman. You're a businessman. This is a business. You're an excellent salesman. But as an academic, as somebody with that kind of background and experience, I find everything we're discussing to be totally disturbing and runs contrary to what I consider to be the best practices in higher education. I understand markets, I understand the trends, I understand the politics that drives this sort of thing, the desire to privatize public universities, which is a political drive in many of these cases. I understand what's happening in the world, but I'm telling you, it's a disaster from an academic point of view. You can't do graduate courses in 8 weeks. That is simply unsound. In a professional degree program, you can't do it.
There's a couple of things I can address and I can't. Number one is, and I appreciate your candidness. Number one is, if you believe this isn't for you and you believe that academically, and I'm not an academician as you just mentioned, and if you believe that this can't happen and that you can't put graduate courses on there and you can't put yours on, I would no way, shape, or form argue with you. I can't, and I'm not qualified to do that. What I can argue with you on is unethical practices. What I can argue with you on is overselling and not delivering.
So you understand these are things
No, and I'm just telling you, as one of the founders of our company, I take personal affront at that. when I read things like that or see that. I've been with the company since inception. I can tell you the highest of ethical standards. If you want to look on Glassdoor, I could probably look on Glassdoor at Pembroke and find people that are unhappy here as well. What I can tell you is the individuals in our call center have been with us on average more than 4 to 5 years. So there are some unhappy people. I can't argue that, you know, but I can't. But when it comes to ethicalness, I can't argue that. And I can look you dead in the eye and say no one's unethical in my company, and they never will be, or they're not with us. So I can't tolerate the thought that our company is unethical. As for, and I won't, number one. And number two is, as for over-promising and under-delivering, all I can tell you is, let's look at the history, and let's look at where we are today, and look at our partners. And what I can tell you is, not all. Have we been successful 100% of the time? No, we have not. As a rule, we're pretty darn good at what we do. And that is that meeting the goals, and whether, again, we have programs that have a couple hundred students, we have programs that have a couple thousand students. So only you can judge whether or not the academic quality is there or not. That's up for you to make that decision. All I can tell you, again, is back to when you look at other programs across the United States and where they are and what they do, that I think many of them are very comfortable with 8-week courses on this model. Anyway, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
I've heard you use the word history several different times in terms of academic partnerships, and I think he alluded to data as well as Kim.
Yeah.
Do you have any data, or are there program evaluations that are available that faculty members can take a look at related to marketplace demands, graduation rates, demographics of students that AP has served, faculty surveys, student evaluations, and so on, that you could potentially provide, which would give us, I think, a little better understanding of AP and make us feel a little more comfortable about where we may potentially be going.
Sure. So demographics, we have all kinds of, obviously we track the demographics of our students very, very carefully. So we know exactly who those students are, where they're coming from, what their age is, what their experience is. Clearly that's not our information, it's the university's information, but we do track that very, very carefully from that perspective. And we can talk about programmatic aspects, graduation, even though the graduation rates are held by the university specifically, what we do track are very strongly are the persistence, the graduation rates in the programs that we represent. So we can show you that type of data as well from that side. Again, keep in mind that where is our goal as a company? If a student falls out of a program, that's tragic to us like it's tragic to you. It's tragic in the way of how we're measured, and it's tragic to you as how you're measured from, you've just lost that student.
Yeah, but in a professional degree program, it's a good thing if they can't hack it and they get out. We're going to have a gatekeeping function in a professional degree.
Well, you maintain that. I don't.
Absolutely.
You maintain that, and you decide the rigor of that course, not me.
Of course.
So if you want to kick somebody out of a program because they're not making it, that's up to you. Totally, and always will be.
It's not a crisis when people leave the program, is all I'm saying.
I agree with that, but you also want the highest graduation retention rates in the program.
No, I want the best product I can produce, because they're going to go to work in the public sector, and that's going to affect the well-being of communities across this state.
And well said, and so are we. Yeah.
I'm the internship coordinator for the MTA program.
Okay.
It is typically listed as a course, and it is, but everybody knows it's a different course.
Yeah.
Almost 100% of the interns that I've put through in the past few years almost take the better part of a calendar year. It's impossible to do it in 8 weeks. Do you see what I'm saying?
The internship?
Yeah, it can't even be done in 16.
Yeah.
It can't even be doing the paperwork that I have to do to keep the eyes going and everything, right? You probably know.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we...
That's a challenge. There's no doubt. Internship aspects and how you monitor those, it's similar to MSN programs, preceptor piece of that. Even in education, there's some of those same issues as well. That's a tough question. And so I don't have a solid answer on the internship question. That's a hard one.
Is that a class you could kind of exclude from the model?
Well, you'd have to do something differently, or you could break it up, or you could have it over a longer period of time. Those are things you'd have to look at.
It's tough because I try to get most of our MPAs to do it in summer when they're not taking anything else, but it will still usually go over to the fall. Like keep carrying the eyes and Because they work already a lot of times, we have a committee that makes a decision on whether they are exempt or not. And that the standards on that have been ramped quite a bit, but it will take it really takes about our calendar year. And
Yes.
That's just the way it is.
And so maybe, again, you have to adjust that.
I also would like you to know that it was before Joe was director. We did do 8-week courses. We were in a Fort Bragg relationship where we were told we had to do 8 weeks online. Before we were ordered to Fort Bragg against some of our better judgment to go to do hybrid on campus and on base, and eventually that number dwindled to 0. And the number one complaint, even in my course, it was just too much, too fast, even if they were doing
Sure.
So why is FSU succeeding?
I don't know. I'm telling you what happened here. As a matter of fact, the last time I was scheduled, I showed up, the last person dropped, and there was no people in my room, and then I never taught anything that semester. We argued for making Fayetteville the market rather than Fort Bragg. And then I was going to ask, since you've given us the name of some of your successes, can we have some of your failures?
Sure. And we've given, by the way, just so everybody knows here too, and I've given this to the university, and I believe calls have been made. So, and you are welcome to call other programs. We're an open book. You already have, or you looked online, obviously, that's fine. We're open to that. So, yes, where have we not succeeded? Where we have not succeeded, in all honesty, is where we've taken programs on. I'll give you an example. Utah State University. We took a master's in human resources online solely. That was the only program, and we could not generate enough market share. And so together, we made a decision not to continue. That was about 5, 6, 7 years ago. But as a rule, and I'll give you we can think about what those other programs, the majority of programs where we've ever dropped out is they weren't high demand programs, in all honesty. We want a full portfolio. The more programs we have, the better the marketing that we do, the more economies of scale, as well as we market your programs. But we have very few. Most of our universities are expanding, not declining. When you look, for example, again, I'll just use it because they're here. Wilmington's adding their master's programs in nursing with us now. They are. They already have. So we started with the RN to BSN, and now they're adding their master's in nursing programs. We just introduced those two. When you look at most of our programs, many of our universities will start with one discipline, and they continue to add more and more. So I'm happy to try and think of other examples for you. We can do that.
Could you describe the process by which you determine what would be potentially profitable programs in our region and specifically at UNCP? Could you describe the process that you went through to determine?
Sure. The first thing we do is we look at market demographics. So first of all, we have a good idea. We've looked at what the portfolio of your programs here are. When you look in education, you have ed administration as an example. In a perfect scenario, you look at ed administration, you look at curriculum instruction, you look at special ed, you look at those programs. Those are the big 3 programs in education.
Big 3 as defined by, that's what
strongest of demand across the United States.
Okay.
When
but
you
I thought with education it was more state specific.
It is. It's both state and region and national. We look at all 3. So we do demographic studies through our research team. And I have data, and I don't have it here right in front of me, but data that shows what your, quote, competing universities are doing in state and in the region, both number of hours, whether they're online, whether they're on campus, and what the cost mechanism is for those courses and programs. We've already looked at that in a number of fields. We've looked at the MBAs. We've looked at, I need to get to something else on my list, and I'll show you. But basically, oh, there, I'm sorry. I didn't see what that was. When you look as an example, and this is, just MBAs, but if you look for ed leadership.
Does this include like looking at what the demand or the need is to meet the schools?
It does that too. This is not here, but this is very high level. So I don't have all that data behind me. But basically this just shows obviously the high level pieces. Are they online? Are they on campus? How many conferrals have they had over the past year in those programs basically? And then it looks at the number of credits, the cost, total tuition and fees. That's the whole idea. So, and we've looked at that for ed leadership. We looked at your MBAs. We looked at special ed. Those are the type of demand drivers we look at. So we look at your portfolio of programs. When we look in your MBAs, We look at whether it's supply chain management, whether it's healthcare administration. We look at different, where your specialties are, if you will, from a university. So we look at all that research and come to you with potential recommendations of programs.
So we're hiring Charleston, Wilmington, Western, and that?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
So if that's calculated, so I know for the MSA program, a lot of their courses are offered at regional campuses. Some of them, a small portion of they've designed their programs so that some courses are online, most courses are hybrid, and some are offered at regional sites. So the tuition rate is not going to be the same depending on how the student is advised and tracked through that as our general graduate tuition rate. So that, I'm not sure if that was factored into that cost.
And honestly, I'm not totally sure. We'd have to look deeper, dive. I'd have to check with our research team and ask them where that number came from.
And the faculty are actually very strategic about trying to keep that cost
Which is great.
in mind as they design that.
And obviously, that's so important because obviously, from a competitive landscape, that's one of the first pieces we look at.
Well, and that's because the Western and App State, both are online models, so their students are not paying the same amount of fees that our campus students are because of how that model is set up. So that's why there's such a big cost difference.
Joe, that actually raises a big issue for us. We notice that because online classes are less expensive here than face-to-face classes, that the online classes actually steal or rob students from the face-to-face classes. In order for this model to work, I would argue that our classes should be priced the same, so that the online program does not steal from our face-to-face program. How do you address that?
So two things, Joe. I would advocate exactly what you said in the latter piece, and that is that I believe that your on-campus and online should be pretty darn close. There should not be a significant differential either way. Either way. Online should not be higher. Online should not be significantly lower. Now, that's number one. So I totally agree with that comment. And on the other piece, you're right. Is it possible that students could move from traditional to on-campus or to online? The answer is that's possible, but especially if there's no differential, very close. Those are totally different students as a rule. Again, the students that are coming here on campus, as a rule, we see a little bit of that trickle, if you will, one way or the other, but not, it's just a different student. The working professional, the individual that can't come to Pembroke, that lives in Charlotte, versus the individual that has the ability to be here and interact with you every single day. Those are two totally different individuals. But you're right, you don't want to drive it one way or the other.
Mary, you've had experience, and I wish Nick was here, but you've had experience with having 3 different concurrent formats. On-campus courses, online courses, and students can take courses off-site, which gets them the lesser cost, as well as the online lesser cost. Do you have a sense, or have you tracked over time, or could you, how students, from my conversations, it seems that your students frequently go from one format to another. They may choose this semester to do it online,
They do have that option.
off-site, another semester face-to-face. So getting back to the issue of robbing students from one to the other, yours seem to be very much commingled across those formats. So can you really say you have X number of online students?
We cannot break it down that way. And in all fairness, when earlier in our coffee with the chancellor, I think it was you talking. Someone was talking about the large growth, over 50% in our MBA program last year. Maybe Joe said, yeah, in all fairness, I would say 35% of all those students are still in the foundation courses, whether it's online or face-to-face or hybrid, right? So our feeling, and Joe, he just asked a good question. If we decide to partner with them, we're going to keep our existing program, okay? And it's going to run side by side. The students that we are hoping that they will attract are people who are working professionals, they're in corporations, many of them have business undergraduate degrees, they're looking to get an accredited MBA program. And the idea, we've taken spreadsheets forward, and I can support some of what Joe said, and the two Joes said, but we're very cognizant of your point. What does it mean for demand for faculty, right? So if we're going to run these programs side by side, which we are allowed to do, aren't we?
Let's clarify that.
Yeah.
So the idea is this: what we don't want to do is have side-by-side online programs that one's 8-week and one's 16-week. Because we are now just competing against each other in the marketplace, and that does not make sense. So what we see is, and we do not have partnerships like that. So where it is if you have an MBA that's online, it's 8 weeks. It's not 8 weeks and 16 weeks, or an MPA, or from that perspective. Now, clearly, you're running your traditional. You might run a weekend. You might have executive MBAs, and this is in addition to that. And those are all running simultaneously. But we do not want to be competing against each other for 8-week and 16-week online students. It just creates significant confusion in the marketplace. And when we have done that, we have failed.
And
so
that's mostly what the discussion this afternoon is going to be about when he meets with our business faculty. Just about, what would that mean to unwind our existing students?
Or transition them into this.
Transition them, yeah. So that's a big thing. And, because the 114 or 112 students we have presently, we still have to meet our demands to them, however they want to finish up the program. Yeah. And at the same time, if we partner with them, be ramping up the new program. So what we have done, my associate dean, the director of the MBA, and myself, is just to look at what does this mean with respect to faculty teaching. And some of your issues about 8 weeks and all. We have 8-week semesters. We've done it every way we can, teaching in load, treating it like a super summer school course for extra pay. So we've sat down and looked at what it means for our faculty, because if we can't do this and we can't do it right and it doesn't meet the same quality we have, we're just not going to do it. And so what we're looking at is how we can do it and do it well. And we'll see what our faculty thinks, but they're looking at it closely.
Makes sense.
All right, thank you. We've got to rush over to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Kenny, I'll post this video.
Okay.
Make sure everybody has it.
All right, great.
I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I just want to take it.
Joe, thank you.
No,
keep on. We end up progressing, we've got to get them all answered. So that is the number one goal. I'll grab my bag.
On the first floor.
We're just going downstairs?
Yes,
Okay.
we're going well.
We're going to the video.
Oh,
so I
okay,
can,
great. No,
thank
worries.
you so much for
I don't
this.
know all those things on the Thursday, but I'll get to you in a minute.
And I'll see you in the same room at probably 1 o'clock.
Okay.
All right. And then you have your laptop.